friends, how are you? I hope you are doing well. If you remember, last week we had started a series with the name of Concept Talk, in which I was supposed to take few topics on ethics, constitution and social justice, just to make you understand the concepts which are generally confusing. So in the first episode we had taken a topic called ethics versus morality, and now in the series the second topic which I am taking today is empathy and sympathy. You know, these two concepts are very much popular nowadays, especially in your paper number 4, that is known as the paper of ethics. In fact, this is not the paper of ethics only, this is the paper of various subjects. If you see the syllabus of ethics, the topic number 5 is basically from philosophy, or you can say ethics, which deals with the thinkers of India and world who have given some concepts for this ethics, the world of ethics. Topic number 6 and 7 come from public administration. Topic number 2, which is named as attitude. Topic number 3, aptitude. And topic number 4, that is emotional intelligence, they come from psychology, or specifically saying they come from social psychology, which is a branch of psychology. Aptitude has been mentioned in topic number 2 and empathy has been mentioned in topic number 3 in your syllabus, where they are discussing the foundational values of civil services. In the series of those values, where they have mentioned objectivity, compassion, they have also mentioned the term empathy. Topic number 4 is emotional intelligence, and you must be knowing that the concept of emotional intelligence is popularly known to be the concept of Daniel Goleman. And when Daniel Goleman described the characteristics of emotional intelligence, or the constituents of, or the ingredients of emotional intelligence, he used the term empathy as a part of that as well. So, in your syllabus, explicitly the word empathy is mentioned in topic number 3. Implicitly, this is very much there in topic number 4. Sympathy as a word is not mentioned in your syllabus, but whenever it comes to understand empathy, one has to understand the difference between empathy and sympathy. So let us try to understand what is the difference, and before making the difference conceptually, I would start with an example, and I believe with the example it will be very easy for you to understand the difference. So let us take an example. Suppose there are 3 friends, A, B and C, and if you understand the example clearly, then I believe the concept building becomes very easy. So A, B and C, they are 3 friends. Let us suppose their age is around 16 years. They are classmates and having the same age. You can imagine 3 boys or 3 girls, or maybe 1 boy, 2 girls, or 1 girl, 2 boys, whatever the combination you want to see. Now the situation is that today morning B's mother has died, and this is of course a very serious situation for B. A, B and C are great friends. They live for each other, they die for each other. They have such kind of friendship. And if I add something in the situation, that is, C had undergone the same situation around 3 years back. So 3 years back his mother had died. So he has the similar example, similar experience in his life. And as far as A is concerned, his mother is alive and he is very happy with his mother. Both the 3 children had a very good relationship with their mother. A still has, B used to have till yesterday, and C used to have till 3 years back. Now, the situation is, as soon as A and C come to know about the demise of the mother of B, naturally they go to B's house, B's residence, and they want to condole him, they want to console him, and they are doing the same thing as with their capacity. Now what I am asking you is, feeling of A for B and feeling of C for B, do you think they are equivalent, or they have some difference of level, difference of understanding, difference of togetherness? And if you think the feeling of both the individuals is same, I think we are lacking something in conceptual understanding of psychology. I hope you are understanding that a person who has already undergone a specific kind of feeling, if he or she sees someone else in the same feeling, he has a deeper level of understanding that what the other person is going through or what the other person is facing right now. Whereas a person who hasn't seen a situation, who hasn't come across a situation, and if he happens to come to know about the sufferings of someone else, whatever honest he or she is, whatever sensitive he or she is, he or she will not be able to experience the same feeling which the other person is going, because he or she does not have the same experience in his life which could have given him wisdom to understand the exactness of the pain of B. To cut it short, I would say, in this situation, the feeling which C is having, we will say this is empathy. And in the same situation, the feeling which A is going through is called sympathy. And I think if this example is there in our mind, it will be very easy to elaborate the concept, it will be very easy to comprehend the concepts, and that is why I have started with this example. Now, what we will do is, we will take the concepts one by one, first sympathy, then empathy. We'll understand the ingredients of the concepts, how we use the terms. Then we will come to the last part, that is comparison. In comparison, we'll see the similarities of these two, then we will see the differences, and finally we will see whether they can coexist or the coexistence of these two situations or abilities is impossible. So, let us start with the first concept, and the first concept is sympathy. Sympathy is the first concept because this is an older concept and it is easy to start with understanding this concept, sympathy. Sympathy is an old word, and in English, at least for last 500 to 600 years, it has been used in psychology, in the basics of psychology. Psychology as a discipline came later, but the basic writings through which we can say psychology emerged, they used to have this word sympathy. And as far as sympathy is concerned, one thing we have to know is this comes from a word of Greek language, that is pathos. Pathos is a Greek word which means either sufferings, or this also means feelings. So in this specific case, the etymological understanding of this word helps. Pathos has two meanings. One is feelings, and that is why we use the words made from pathos to describe the feelings, like telepathy is a word. Pathos also means sufferings, and that is why we use some words made from pathos which deal with the understanding of sufferings, like pathology. In medical science, pathology is the branch which tries to understand the reasons of pain or suffering of someone. And that is why the laboratories in which we get tested ourselves to know what the real problem is, they are also known to be pathological labs, and that also comes from the Greek pathos. So as far as the word sympathy is concerned, it comes from pathos, Greek. And if I have to elaborate what does it mean, I will use a flow chart to make you understand what is sympathy. First of all, sympathy is an ability. तो अगर हमें बहुत बेसिक लेवल पे समझना हो, so we can start from here. Sympathy is an ability. Ability for what? Ability to feel. This is not to know, this is not to understand, this is to feel. Ability to feel. Ability to feel what? And then we say ability to feel pain and suffering. So if I am able to feel my pain and my suffering, this is not sympathy. So the final word is ability to feel pain and suffering of others. So if someone has the ability of feeling someone else's pains and sufferings, we'll say this person does have an ability, and the name of that ability is called sympathy. Now, when we say others, we must understand that this others include three. Which three? If I have sympathy, I can have sympathy for other human beings. This is one situation. So, ability to feel the pains of other human beings is sympathy. Secondly, this can be animals, this can be birds. So if I'm going somewhere and on the way I find a dog or a cow or a bird which is in a situation to die, which is not well, and if I feel that I should help him or her, or even if I'm not able to feel that I should help him or her, but I feel his pain, if I feel that his pain should be reduced, should come to an end, such type of feeling, this is also a part of sympathy. Not only human beings, not only animals, not only birds, but also the fictional characters, we can also bring them in this. Fictional characters. What does it mean? It means the characters of films, novels, stories, and this is very much evident from various films. If you see a film which is tragic in its end, any tragedy, and if you are able to feel the pain of the hero of the film or some other character who is going to a tragic end or who is facing a tragic situation, it means you are able to feel the pains of a fictional character, which you know is a fictional character, which you know is not a real character. For example, in Hindi cinema, if we take some examples, there used to be a film called Anand. Later on, there was another film called Kal Ho Na Ho. In both the films, the hero is a very gentleman kind of a person. He is very supportive to all other people. He is very nice. But in both the films, the hero is suffering from a disease which cannot be cured and he has to die very soon. And as soon as some other people come to know that he is going to die very soon, they feel a lot of sympathy for him, but they can't do anything. They can't help him. That's a different thing. In films like Gajani or Ashiki 2, again, if you are able to feel sympathy with the heroine of Gajani or with the hero of Ashiki 2, it means you know they are fictional characters, but still their pain is felt to us, and that means we can have sympathy even with the fictional characters depicted in the films, novels, stories, and anywhere else. So, in simpler terms, sympathy is an ability to feel the pains and sufferings of other human beings, animals, birds, and fictional characters. This is the meaning of the word sympathy. Now, let us understand this with some more depth. Let us start with an example. Suppose there is a boy and the age of the boy is, let us suppose, 25 years or 26 years, whatever. He is physically fit, mentally fit, he is very happy, he is very bindas kind of a person, and his father, whose age is 55 years now, He has developed diabetes and blood pressure and few other diseases due to his lifestyle or due to the stress he is going through. He has to face a lot of stress in order to maintain his family, and he tries his best that the stress does not shift to his son or other members of family. So the son is enjoying the life, whereas father is struggling with the life. Now the father has the problem of BP, and whenever his blood pressure increases, he feels a lot of anxiety. And he starts sweating, he starts kind of crying that he is not able to handle himself. And whenever such situation happens, he is lying on the bed. Sometimes his body is shivering. His son is seeing him. His son loves him very much. He wants to help him. But even with the best capabilities of understanding of intelligence, he is not able to understand exactly what is happening to his father. And that is because he does not have the real experience that when blood pressure increases, what actually happens to a person, what actually he or she feels from inside. He doesn't have the experience. And whatever the amount of IQ or intelligence quotient he has, he will never be able to understand the exactness of the pain or the suffering of his father. Similarly, if we take an administrative example, suppose there is an IAS officer who was born in Delhi or maybe Bangalore or maybe Mumbai from an urban background. He or she had a convent education, a very good English medium school from which he or she studied, got selected in the first attempt in the age of 22, 23 years only. He got a cadre, suppose that the cadre is Odisha or Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh, a state where tribal population has a good percentage. And then he is transferred, then he is posted in a district for the training, and as soon as the training completes, he or she is given the first posting, and the first posting comes to be in a district which is primarily or majorly of the tribal population. And then he comes to know various things. One day, a tribal family comes to meet him, and he is very generous. He meets with all the people who wish to meet him. And while meeting him, he comes to know that these persons do not even have a house. These persons do not even have toilets in their houses, or so-called houses which are not built properly. He comes to know that various kinds of exploitation these people have to face because of the persons who try to snatch their land from them. He also comes to know that there are no schools as such. And if the child of the family has to go to the school, he or she has to travel at least 5 kilometers by feet. And then in that government school, many a times the teachers are not present. There is no good infrastructure. This IAS officer had never undergone such situations in his life. And now, he wants to understand, he wants to feel the situations they are going through. But again, since he or she does not have the experience of undergoing such situations firsthand, he will not be able to exactly understand what the pain or suffering this family has to go through. And that is why there will be a gap. There will be a difference of understanding. There will be no exactness. The otherness will remain. Otherness means I and you. I am not exactly able to comprehend your situation because I have not undergone the situations which you are going through or which you have gone through. And that is why when we say a person is having sympathy, we also want to say that this person is not able to exactly understand the situation in which the other person is going through. So, sympathy means the ability to feel the pains and sufferings of other persons and creatures and fictional characters. And this in itself means that I am not able to exactly understand their pain because that is not a part of my experience. I am trying to understand, but I am not able to exactly understand. This specific situation in psychology is known as sympathy. I hope you have been able to understand the concept, and from this very concept we can jump towards empathy and it becomes very easy. One last thing I would like to say. Sympathy starts from the ability of feeling, and when we say ability of feeling, that is called emotional or affective ability. So, sympathy is basically an ability related with emotional side of an individual, emotional part of the brain, we can say. Sometimes we may feel that we should help the other person or the creature, sometimes we may not. So, if you also feel that you should help the person or the creature, then I would say this is a second level of sympathy, and that level can be named as compassionate sympathy or the sympathy which creates compassion. Compassion is a kind of sympathy which drives a person to help other person, or at least to try to help other person. So when the feeling of help, when the intention of helping the other person who is in pain or suffering also comes together, then we say this is a kind of compassionate sympathy. Whereas if you only feel the pain but you don't wish to help the other person or the creature, then it is called the emotive sympathy. You may be thinking that why should I not feel to help? Why should I not have intention to help? Sometimes it happens. Especially for an example, if you know a person who is going through bad situations, you want him to be okay, but he himself does a lot of things due to which his situations get deteriorated. In that situation, whenever you will see that person, you will feel sorry for him or her, but you won't try to help him. You won't wish to help him because you have tried many times to help him. Many people have tried many times to help him. Just take an example, a person suffering from blood pressure, high blood pressure, BP. The only solution is that he or she should take his or her medicines properly every day. Many a times his family members, his parents, his children, his brothers, sisters, even friends, even neighbors have suggested him, advised him not to miss the medicines. But he is so careless that he many times misses his medicines. And because he sometimes misses his medicines, that is why his problem not only continues, but it becomes bigger and bigger. And just because his problem is becoming bigger due to his carelessness, after a point of time you will start feeling sorry for his situations, but you will stop feeling the intention to help him because that is not working. So sympathy can have of two levels, one in which you only feel the pain of other person. Secondly, where you not only feel the pain of the other person, you also intend to help him or her out so that his pain or suffering can come to an end. This is the concept of sympathy. And now, after understanding this concept, we can understand what is empathy. Empathy is gaining more importance these days, and that is why UPSC syllabus has explicitly mentioned this concept, and in one more topic implicitly this is available there. So what is empathy? We should understand two things first. First of all, empathy also comes from the same word, that is pathos, and I had told you this word is from the Greek language. So etymologically, sympathy and empathy have the same roots. And when we say they have same roots, it means in the process of evolution, in the process of development, at some point of time, one word became sympathy, one word became empathy. This is the basic thing. Here, pathos, the meaning of pathos, I had told you, it has two meanings. One is suffering, one is feeling. Here, the meaning of pathos, which plays major role, is feeling, not the suffering. So this is one reference we should take note of. Secondly, empathy is a new word. It is believed that it started to be used around 150 years back only, whereas sympathy as a term, as a word, has been, I think it has been used for at least 600 to 700 years in the history from now. One more thing. Initially, when empathy word came in psychology, it was not used in the sense it is used now. So the early sense, initial sense from this word which was taken is now known as pathetic fallacy. If you are a student of literature, you must have definitely heard this word. What does this word mean? Pathetic fallacy. Pathetic is not the pathetic which we use nowadays. If you are seeing a video and you are not liking the video, you can say it's pathetic. If you are listening to some song and the singer is singing very poorly, you can say he's a very pathetic singer. But here, pathetic is not in that sense. Here, pathetic is in the sense of feeling. It is also coming from this word, pathos. So, pathetic is feeling, related with deep feelings. And fallacy means the mistakes which we make in the process of logic or arguments or reasoning. So whenever in the process of reasoning we make some mistakes in a subject called in a subject called logic, those mistakes are popularly known as fallacies. So pathetic fallacy is a fallacy which is generally made by the person who is in deep emotive state. For example, like there is a person who has went through a breakup just 1 hour back, and it's a very fresh breakup for him, and he or she is not able to manage it. And he or she is coming back to his home or the hostel, wherever he resides. Suddenly, there are so many clouds in the sky. Suddenly, there is so much rain, heavy rain started, and a lot of sounds coming from the sky. And then he sees towards the sky and says, "Oh God, you are also weeping in my sorrow, in my pain. Even the nature is crying with me. Even the clouds are crying with me." If such kind of statements somebody is making, or at least thinking from such level, we say this person is going through a situation called pathetic fallacy. In the initial times, the meaning of empathy was taken in psychology as pathetic fallacy. But now, especially in the last 20-30 years, there is a psychologist called Daniel Goleman. You must have heard his name. He made this term very popular. Even otherwise, the term had significance, but Daniel Goleman made this term very popular. And now, what we understand from empathy is the definition given by Daniel Goleman and some other psychologists which also have a similar understanding of this concept. So now coming to the meaning or interpretation or definition of empathy, what is it? Empathy is, again, it's an ability, like sympathy was an ability. In the same sense, empathy is also an ability, like sympathy. Ability of what? So here we'll say ability to understand. Please try to remember. There I had written ability to feel. Here I am writing ability to understand. Understand what? There I had written pains, sufferings. Here I am writing moods or mental states. So, empathy is an ability of a person. Sympathy is also the ability of a person. We don't say that animals have the ability of sympathizing or empathizing, so we are talking about the human beings only. Ability of a person to understand the moods or mental states of others. Now, as soon as the word others comes, I would again like to remind you, others here also include the same set of three. One, other human beings. So I am writing HB, which means human beings. Others also means animals and birds. I am writing A/B, animals and birds. And the third category is fictional characters. I am writing FC for that. So, empathy is the ability to understand the moods and mental states of others, which includes human beings, other creatures, birds and animals, and the fictional characters. Now, if you try to understand the differences between these terms, primarily one is this word understand and one is this moods and mental states. So first of all, I can tell you, I will later on clarify as well. In sympathy, someone else has to be in pain or suffering, but for being empathetic or for being empathic, you need not to have other person in pain or suffering. He can be happy and his happiness or her happiness can also be understood with a sense of empathy. That's not a problem. And secondly, this is understanding. And when we say understanding, understanding does mean here, in sympathy, I had told you, in sympathy, we are not exactly able to understand what the other person is going through. And that is generally because we do not have the same experience, we do not have the similar experience or the background that the other person is having. Empathy is the concept to bridge that gap. When you are able to understand exactly does not mean in psychology 100%, it is very close to 100%. When you are able to understand exactly what other person is going through, maybe in his pain or sufferings, maybe in his happiness, or maybe in normal moods, whatever, there is no otherness, there is no gap. You feel the same thing that person is feeling. You understand exactly what that person is going through or feeling. And this exactness of understanding, this makes this concept unique. And that is why sympathy and empathy has a great difference. And this difference comes only on 2 points. One, sympathy has to do only with the sufferings and pains. And empathy has, and the other difference is that empathy is the ability to understand exactly means almost exactly, the mental states or moods of any other person or creature or fictional characters. Due to this only, Daniel Goleman has discussed about 3 levels or 3 types of empathy. If we understand those 3 levels of empathy, it becomes very easy for us to grasp the whole concept. The first level of empathy is known as cognitive empathy. Cognitive. Fine. The second level of empathy is known as emotive or affective empathy. I'll use the term emotive. And the third level of empathy is known as compassionate empathy. So, in his writings, Daniel Goleman has discussed about three types or three levels of empathy. I would like to say three levels because the levels word is better to make this concept understood. What is cognitive empathy? Cognitive comes from cognition. Cognition is understanding something. In our mind, we have some faculties which are intellectual faculties, like reasoning, like comprehension, like logic, like mathematical understanding. These all intellectual processes, if we take them together, we say these are cognitive capabilities or these are cognitive abilities. To know something, to understand something, to comprehend something, this is called to be cognition. And cognitive means the process or the ability of knowing or understanding or comprehending something. So cognitive empathy means the ability to understand the mood or mental state of someone else. So this is the ability of understanding, and this is the basic ability because other levels of empathy come from here only. So the basic meaning of empathy as per Daniel Goleman is the ability of understanding, and that is why in his concept ability is basically a cognitive concept. Now in some situations, when you are able to understand the situation of someone else, sometimes you may also get emotional with him or her, sometimes you may not. If your cognitive empathy makes you emotional as well, you also come in a situation to feel the same emotions that the other person is feeling. Please understand the difference. If you are exactly understanding what other person is feeling, this is cognitive empathy. On the next level, if you also start feeling exactly the same emotions that the other person is feeling or going through, this is called emotive empathy. So this is feeling, and as far as the feeling is concerned, it has to do everything with emotional aspects. Now sometimes you may understand and feel, and sometimes, especially when the other person is in some problem, you may also wish to help him out. And if after cognitive and emotive levels you also fail to help him or help her, the intention of help, if present, then I would say the third level comes, and that is called compassionate empathy. Now, we can understand the difference of these three from one example so that the things become easy. Suppose there is an officer in civil services and he is a very honest officer, an officer with integrity. I'll very soon discuss in some of the next lectures what is the difference between integrity and honesty and probity. These terms are very similar. And the suggestions given by most of you in the comment box, I have seen the suggestions. My team has sent them to me. And one was this suggestion, sympathy and empathy, and integrity, honesty is there. There are some more words as well. I'll deal with all the words gradually. So there is an honest officer and his age is suppose 55 years. And because he is a very honest officer, he has not been able to get more promotions because he has always been a problem for the governments due to his honesty. And he remembers very well that when he was very young, there were around 8 to 10 batchmates. He was the most honest person of the batch. All others got promotions in time, and he was the only person with full integrity, and that is why he got suspended many times in his career. So he has seen a lot of such situations. He has suffered a lot of pain. Now, there is another honest officer, young honest officer, YHO, let us say, young honest officer, in the age of 27, 28, let us say. And he is doing almost the similar things which this officer used to do when he was in this age. Now, the young officer is doing well because he feels that he has been selected to do these things only. He doesn't come into the pressure of MLAs, MPs, local leaders, communal leaders, casteist leaders. He doesn't come in the pressure. He does what he is supposed to do as per the constitutional morality. And this has become a problem. And finally, one day, when he was expecting something good to happen with him, he got suspended. This person got suspended. Now, his batchmates, let us assume there are 10 batchmates and he is one of 10. Remaining 9, let us assume they are all good friends. At least 2 or 3 are very good friends with him. They will try to understand his pain, but they will not be able to understand his pain because they have never gone through such a situation. So the friends can, at the maximum, they can have sympathy with this person. I told you, in sympathy, you have to feel the pain, but exactness is missing. With this person, who will be able to have empathy? This officer of 55 years. He can have empathy. Now he can have 3 levels of empathy. 1, he is exactly understanding what this person must be going through. And to this level, understanding level, this is called cognitive empathy. So this officer must be having this in the beginning. Now, in the second phase, he may also feel sad for him. He may also feel what he must be feeling. It's not necessary. He may feel, he may not feel. If he knows him well, if he sees himself in this person, he may have the feeling. If he comes to feel the same thing for him that this young officer is feeling, we will say this is the level of emotive empathy. He is not only understanding, he is also feeling. And if finally he decides, he is afraid. Because when he was suspended for the first time, he had gone through suicidal tendencies for some time. He is afraid that this person also must be going through such mental trauma, and this is his moral responsibility to help him out. And he decides to call that young person just to tell him that such situations happen and you have not to be broken with such situations. You have to be brave. You have to bear with all this. With his experiences, he will tell him that I also had all these situations, all these experiences, but don't worry, you'll come out of this. And for in the first time, it feels very bad, but gradually people come to know that you are so honest, and this honesty pays you as well in the social respect, in the social prestige. And you are not supposed to worry at all, because ultimately, if you are right, the government cannot do anything against you. Now, there are 3 levels. 1, he can only understand. 2nd, he can also feel. 3rd, he can also act to help him. And for these 3 situations, Daniel Goleman has termed the 3 levels of empathy. 1 is cognitive, 2nd is emotive, and 3rd is compassionate. I believe the conceptual understanding so far has been completed. Now, the last part is what is the difference or what is the comparison between these concepts, which I have in a way discussed in between, but formally we can just write what is the differences. So let us come to the comparison part, and when we have to compare 2 concepts, we have to see 3 things. First, we will see If there are some similarities between these concepts, what are they? And after similarities, we will also see what are the differences. Suppose there is a question in UPSC mains and they ask you what are the differences between sympathy and empathy. So you should have at least a table of 3 to 4 differences which you can write there. So first of all, similarities. Similarities are only 2, and that I have already discussed with you. First similarity is etymological similarity, which means both the words have been developed from the same root, and you know the same root comes from which language? Greek language, and the word is pathos. So the first similarities is linguistically, etymologically, both the words have the same root, which is in the Greek word pathos. Second similarity is that both are a kind of ability. And in both the abilities, what is there? The ability to connect with other persons. So both are similar in the sense that both are the abilities to connect with others. And this others may include human beings and, as you know, animals, birds, and fictional characters. These are the only 2 similarities. Differences are much. So let us come to the differences part, and better we can have a new table for differences. That will be easier. So what are the differences between sympathy and empathy? So I'll write a word sympathy here, and then I can have empathy here. And now we can make a table of the differences, like the difference number 1. In sympathy, the first thing is this is an ability to feel. Maybe later on you can have compassionate level, but basically this is the ability to feel. Whereas empathy is basically the ability to understand. This is first. Second, sympathy is used when the other person is in a state of grief or pain or suffering. So only in pain or suffering, if someone is going through pains or sufferings, only in that situation the sympathy of other person becomes active. In the case of empathy, this can be any mood or mental state. This has not necessarily to be a state of grief or pain or sufferings. Now, I can say in sympathy, whatever the level of ability of the person is concerned, there is a kind of otherness which remains. Otherness exists. Otherness means when you feel the pain of someone else, what remains is I and he or she. I am feeling his pain. I am not exactly feeling his pain like I am feeling my pain. I am feeling the pain, but I know this is not my pain, this is his or her pain. This is called otherness. This otherness is blurred or minimized, or it becomes meaningless in case of empathy. So we say no otherness. In psychology, we do not deal with 100% of something. Otherness does not exist means practically there is no otherness. It may be 99%, it may be 98%, maybe 99.9%. It's not exactly 100% of oneness, But yes, more or less, it is the level of oneness, so we will say otherness does not exist. Number 4. Now, if you are able to understand the concepts, you will become very familiar with this. If you have to tell in sympathy and empathy which is the deeper understanding, which is the deeper feeling, if it's emotive empathy. So in psychology, it's very much common to say that empathy is deeper understanding or feeling as compared to sympathy. So sympathy is less deep, whereas empathy is deeper in comparison to sympathy. And finally, as you remember, sympathy has 2 levels. I had told you first level is emotive because this is basically concerned with a feeling. Second level can be compassionate. We do not recognize sympathy to be a cognitive concept. This is true that without a cognition, there can never be a feeling. But sympathy is not the exact cognitive understanding of other person. That is why we start with the definition that sympathy is the ability to feel. It is not the ability of exact cognition, it is the ability of feeling. So that is why we say it has basically 2 levels. One is emotive or the feeling level, and second is the compassion level or compassionate level. Whereas in empathy, there are 3 levels as elaborated by Daniel Goleman. The first level is cognitive empathy, which is the basic level. Whenever the definition of empathy comes, it has to be the definition of cognitive empathy, because empathy, as a different concept from sympathy, is the ability to exactly understand the mental state or the mood of the other person. It is not the ability of feeling. Ability of feeling comes after cognitive, if at all it comes. So the second part is emotive empathy and third part is compassionate empathy. This is the list of differences between sympathy and empathy. And now the last part of the last part is there any possibility of their coexistence, or they always have to be existing differently? Now in the last topic also I had told you, in psychology or in any concept building, basically whenever you deal with 2 concepts, you must understand through some Venn diagrams what is the exact relationship between these concepts. One relationship can be this, one can be this, one can be this, and one can be this. These are 4 diagrams. So this relationship exists between 2 things which are quite contrary to each other, which cannot coexist, like fire and water, as you know. This exists when there is a set and one is subset to that set. For example, birds and crow, animals and dog. So dog will become the smaller part and animals will become the bigger part. Circle. This is a third situation, third relationship. When 2 things are different at some point, whereas they become similar or they become coexisting at some places. Most of the concepts come in this area only. So if I have to tell you what is the relationship between, like ethics and morality, in the last lecture I had told you this can be a good diagram to understand that. Even if you have to understand what is the relationship between religion and ethics, this diagram will work. What is the relationship between law and ethics, the same diagram will work. In a lot of concepts which are very close to each other, this diagram or this relationship works. This means the 2 things which are known as 2 things are basically one thing only, and that is why 2 circles exactly on each other. This is rarely used. This is used for two words which denote the same thing. Generally, this is used only there. So whenever you have to understand two concepts, relationship of two concepts exactly, you have to understand which diagram will satisfy their relationship. And as far as this is concerned, I would say the relationship between sympathy and empathy, I won't say this is exactly like intersecting. These are two circles which are generally different from each other. But there is a small space, little space where they merge. And that is what I would like to make it understandable, that what does this small space mean? So there is a very limited space where sympathy and empathy do merge with each other. Otherwise, normally they have different areas altogether. So now we have three areas, we can say. Now this will be easier to understand through these diagrams. Yes. And we can name them as well. One we can say this is empathy. This we can say is sympathy. And this small area would be empathy plus sympathy, empathy and sympathy. Now to make this understanding clear, I have to discuss three things. One, what is this? Which means some examples where we have sympathy but we don't have empathy. One. Second, what is this? Some examples when we have empathy but we do not have sympathy. And finally, this small area, the rare examples which we can say are the examples of empathy as well as of sympathy. So if we are able to give three examples, I mean the examples of all these three relationships, then we can say this diagram will work, and then we can write the answer as per this. So the first situation is where sympathy is there but empathy is not there. This is the first situation. Thousands of situations you can have in your life for this. Any pain of anyone else which you have not been able to understand properly because your experiences or your wisdom is not able to make you understand that. For an example, if you are going through a road and there is a beggar on the street and you see him, you feel sympathy for him. But because we have never been beggars, or the person who is watching him, who is looking at him, has never been a beggar, so he will not be able to exactly understand what his situation is. Same example, any person who is physically unwell with a problem which the other person does not know. For example, a small girl, a small boy, if he looks at his parents or grandparents, maybe some of them is going through cancer. So this small kid will never be able to understand what exactly he or she is going through, but he will have the sympathy because he is a part of the family. And when all the parts of the family, all the members of the family are crying with him, are feeling sorry for him, naturally, this boy or girl will also have the same feeling. So this is a situation when sympathy is there, but empathy is not there. So first situation we have understood. Now the second situation, where empathy is present, but sympathy is not present. There can be 2-3 different situations of this example I gave you. First situation is, in one situation, if you have to understand the happiness of someone else, I told you already that in sympathy, this is necessary that the person whose pains and sufferings you will be feeling has to be in a situation, sorry situation, a problem situation. But in empathy, that is not a must. So suppose take an example that a mother who had chosen her husband by her own, on her own, and now she is a mother. His daughter today has chosen a husband for her. And the daughter asked her mother, "Mom, this is my choice. Do you agree with this?" And mom says, "Yes, I agree, because it's your life that you have to lead and the choice should be yours." And after that, mother is able to understand the level of happiness that this girl must be going through, because she also had experienced the same thing when she was in her age. This is empathy. But this is not sympathy, because this is not a sorry situation. This is not a painful situation or a situation of suffering. Secondly, there is a concept called compassion fatigue. I will tell you, but let us understand. Suppose the situation is of only cognitive empathy. And from this we can make the concept clear. This is only cognitive empathy, there is no emotive empathy. And as you know, sympathy is the ability of feeling. Just knowing is not sympathy. But just knowing the situation of someone else can be empathy. So, in a situation when someone is having empathy at the level of only cognition, they can say empathy is there, but sympathy is not there, because there is no feeling at all. This happens because sometimes one person goes through a situation called compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is a situation when a person exposed to similar situations stops feeling the emotions in that situation. For an example, there is a policeman. He entered the police system because he wanted to make the situations good for society. He was very much enthusiastic in the beginning. When he saw first murder, he was so much shocked that he could not sleep for many days. He tried his best to do everything to put the people who were responsible behind the bars. But gradually, he saw that every fifth day there is a murder case in his area, in his jurisdiction. And gradually, after seeing around 100 cases, now any new murder case doesn't make him emotional. This is just another case for him. He has to handle the case, he has to file a report, he has to make a charge sheet, that's all. The feeling towards the victim, which was the fire to join this service, that disappears after time. And if someone reaches that situation, that is called compassion fatigue. In such situations, one person is able to have cognitive empathy, but is not able to have emotive empathy. There can be a third situation as well, when there is a level of feelings for other person, but there is no otherness. No otherness, I hope you remember. In sympathy, it is believed that whatever the level of our intelligence is there, but we are not able to exactly understand what the other person is going through. But in empathy, ideally speaking, there should be no otherness. One should be able to feel exactly the other person is feeling. I'm not talking about cognitive aspect. Now, I'm talking about if the empathy is beyond cognition, that is emotive empathy. In emotive empathy and in sympathy, please try to understand. In sympathy also one feels. In emotive empathy also one feels. Then what is the difference between sympathy and emotive empathy? This difference lies in the gap or the otherness. If someone is feeling the pain of someone else but not with exactness, there is some gap, there is some otherness, we will say this feeling is sympathy. And when this otherness, when this gap becomes zero or almost zero, we say this emotional understanding or this level of feeling is emotive empathy, not the sympathy. For example, suppose there is a mother who got widowed in the age of 50 years, let us suppose. Okay, let us make it 70 years so that we do not increase sufferings in the world. So there is a woman who became a widow in the age of 70. She used to love her husband very much and she feels emptiness without her husband. Now she has a daughter. Her daughter is also in the same condition, same relationship with her husband. They both love each other very well. And suppose the daughter, after 20-30 years, again becomes widow when she is around 60 years, and now this woman is around 85 years now. But she became widow when she was 70. Now she is 85 and her daughter, which is 60 years of age, has become widow. So the mother, her level of understanding and feeling for her daughter, do you think there will be a distance, an otherness, a gap between? Or she will be able to feel exactly or almost exactly what her daughter is feeling? And that is why at such a level, we won't say that mother has sympathy for her daughter. We would say the mother has empathy, not only cognitive, but also emotive and also compassionate empathy for her daughter. And in such situations, we say this is empathy and not sympathy. So, which is the area where empathy and sympathy become one? If at all that area exists, what is that area? This is the most challenging part of this concept understanding. I would say exactly there is no area. The area where the differences of these two concepts are blurred, that area only can be said to be an area of empathy plus sympathy. The differences are blurred. How are they blurred? Let us suppose a situation. Situation is of pain, so it can be sympathy as well as it can be empathy. The person who is feeling for someone else does not have the same background. No same background. But he has little different background or little similar background, we can say. So background of little difference is there. For example, a boy whose mother is dead today, his situation being felt by a boy whose mother is there but whose father had died few years back. Death of mother and death of father are not exactly same situations. Death of mother has more emotional impact. Death of father has more other impacts in the family. Emotional is also there, but impact is of existence of family, financial, and a lot of other things. So not exact situation the other person has undergone, but he has gone similar situations. Or even if that person does not have the similar experiences, but he or she has a good ability of perspective taking. Perspective taking is a word in psychology in which a person is able to see things from the perspective of someone else, which is the basic definition of empathy. Before commenting on someone else, try to put your feet in his shoes. This is the basic understanding of empathy. If you want to understand someone, try to see yourself in his or her position. So if someone has a good ability of perspective taking, which makes him or her able to understand or feel what the other person is going through, even without having the similar conditions, in such a situation, a person having sympathy reaches to the level of almost having empathy. And when the differences of sympathy and empathy get blurred, we are supposed to say that this is a situation of sympathy and empathy, and we cannot differentiate between these two at this point of time. I hope the difference and the relationship has become clear to you. So in the nutshell, if you have to write an answer on this question, you will say, sympathy is the ability to feel the pains and sufferings of others, whereas empathy is the ability to understand the moods or mental states of others. The similarities are that both have the same linguistic and etymological background, and both have one more thing in common, that is, they are the abilities to connect with other persons. As far as the differences are concerned, sympathy has to do only with the pains and sufferings of others. Empathy may be based on pains, but may not be based on pains. In sympathy, we have a gap of understanding level. In empathy, we do not have the gap or the otherness. Sympathy can have two levels. One is of emotions, one is of compassion. Empathy has three levels: cognition, emotion, and compassion. Empathy is deeper in comparison to sympathy. And after these differences, you can say, as far as their coexistence is concerned, we face thousands of situations in our lives when we have sympathy but not empathy, like a person with some disease which we do not understand exactly. There are many situations when we have empathy and not sympathy. One in happiness, one where there is no otherness, and one when we only have cognitive empathy and we don't feel for someone else, we just know what the other person is going through. And only in some situations, the differences of sympathy and empathy are so much blurred that we have to say this can either be sympathy or be empathy, or we can say this is the merger of sympathy and empathy in rare situations. I hope this helps you in understanding these concepts. If you like this, please in comments tell me what kind of more topics you want, and I'll come almost every week with a topic to clarify the differences between near concepts of ethics, constitution, society, and justice. Thanks a lot. Good day to all of you. Thank you.